There are certain things in life we learn to overlook: a late reply to a message, a mistake made out of forgetfulness, a moment of human weakness. These are part of being alive, part of sharing space with imperfect beings just like ourselves. But there are other things, darker things, that should never be tolerated, not even for the sake of keeping peace, not even in the name of kindness. Philosophy teaches us that the soul must have boundaries, that dignity requires lines which cannot be crossed. To allow these lines to blur is to lose yourself little by little, until one day, you wake up and realize you no longer recognize who you are. The first behavior we must never tolerate is disrespect. Disrespect is more than an unkind word or an impatient sigh. It is the erosion of your humanity in someone else's eyes. It is when another person ceases to see you as an equal soul with thoughts, dreams, and fears of your own. Disrespect often begins quietly, a dismissive laugh when you speak, a subtle interruption when your voice tries to rise. And yet, the more it is allowed, the more it grows, until the weight of being unseen becomes unbearable. Philosophers through the ages have spoken of human dignity as something sacred. Kant argued that every human being carries an intrinsic worth that cannot be measured in gold or silver, because we are not means to an end, we are ends in ourselves. To tolerate disrespect is to let another person treat you as less than that sacred worth. And when you accept that treatment, even once, you risk convincing yourself that perhaps you deserve it. But you do not. Respect is the soil in which all relationships grow. Without it, love turns to possession, friendship becomes manipulation, and even family bonds can curdle into control. Imagine a tree trying to grow without roots. It may stand for a while, but every storm will threaten to topple it. So too with us. Without respect anchoring us, the storms of life strip away our spirit. To live well, then, is to guard this soil with vigilance. If someone waters it with kindness, nourish that bond. If someone poisons it with contempt, protect yourself and walk away. For the self that allows disrespect to flourish is a self that slowly forgets how much it is worth. The second behavior never to be tolerated is deceit. Lies corrode trust, and trust is what makes the world bearable. We live in uncertainty every day, the future is a mystery, fate is unpredictable, even our own hearts change from season to season. The only way we find balance amidst this chaos is through trust in others. We trust that the hand we hold will not suddenly strike us. We trust that the promise given will not be abandoned in the dark. Deceit destroys this fragile balance. A lie may seem small, a secret hidden, a truth twisted slightly out of shape. But philosophy reminds us that truth is the foundation of meaning. Nietzsche warned that when we lie, we not only deceive others, we deceive ourselves. We build a house of illusions and then are surprised when the walls collapse. And when we tolerate deceit from others, we begin to live in someone else's illusion, cut off from reality. Think of how exhausting it is to be near someone who lies. Every word must be questioned, every memory becomes uncertain. You find yourself replaying conversations in your head, wondering what was real and what was theater. In time, even silence feels dishonest, because you no longer know what lives behind it. This is the slow torture of deceit. It steals not only trust but peace of mind. To protect yourself from deceit is not about paranoia, it is about self-respect. It is to say that your heart deserves clarity, your life deserves truth, even if the truth is painful. A painful truth can be healed, but a comforting lie can rot you from within. The one who lies to you has chosen their convenience over your dignity. That is not love, nor friendship, nor loyalty. That is betrayal disguised as care. The third behavior you must never allow is cruelty. Cruelty is not the same as anger, and it is not the same as conflict. Anger can arise from passion, conflict can lead to understanding. But cruelty is the deliberate decision to cause suffering. It is cold, calculated, and indifferent to the humanity of the one who suffers. Cruelty appears in many shapes. Sometimes it is physical, as history's darkest pages have shown us. Other times it is emotional, the word designed to cut deepest, the silence meant to isolate, the mocking laugh meant to humiliate. Cruelty is always about power. It is the assertion that one person's comfort or pleasure is worth more than another's well-being. The Stoics warned against allowing the cruelty of others to shape our inner peace. They taught that while we cannot always prevent cruelty in the world, we can refuse to absorb it into our spirit. But refusing cruelty does not mean enduring it silently. To endure cruelty in silence is to let it grow roots in your life. Refusing cruelty means standing firm in the truth that you deserve better, that no one has the right to feed on your pain. Cruelty tolerated becomes cruelty normalized. And once normalized, it spreads like fire. To stop it, you must first stop it in the realm of your own life. Do not give it shelter, do not excuse it, do not confuse it with passion or care. For cruelty and care cannot exist together. One suffocates the other, always. We have already seen how disrespect, deceit, and cruelty corrode the very soil of the human spirit. These are poisons that eat away at dignity, trust, and compassion. But there are two more behaviors that, if allowed to remain in your life, will quietly suffocate you until you no longer remember what freedom feels like. These final shadows may seem less obvious at first, yet their effects run deep, shaping the course of your life in ways you might not notice until years have passed. The fourth behavior never to be tolerated is control. To control another person is to deny them the most sacred gift of existence, the freedom to choose their own path. And to allow someone to control you is to hand over the pen that writes your life story, letting them decide the chapters while you remain only a character within their narrative. Control often hides itself in the language of care. It may sound like concern, like guidance, like protection. But if you listen closely, you will hear the chains rattling beneath the kindness. You will hear the word no where your heart longs for yes, and you will see doors close before you even reach them. Control is love twisted into possession. It is advice hardened into command. It is protection turned into a cage. Philosophy teaches us that freedom is not merely the ability to act, but the ability to become. To be human is to unfold, to try, to fail, to learn, to grow. When another person demands control, they do not merely stop you from doing something, they stop you from becoming who you are meant to be. And when you accept this control, even out of love, you risk shrinking into a shadow of yourself, until the fullness of your potential has been locked away. The great existentialists insisted that each of us must take responsibility for our own choices. Sartre declared that we are condemned to be free, meaning that freedom is both a burden and a blessing, a weight we must carry but also a gift that makes us human. To surrender this freedom to another person, willingly or unwillingly, is to betray that gift. It is to say that someone else's fear is more important than your destiny. The truth is simple: love can guide, but it cannot chain. Real care inspires, but it never commands. To tolerate control is to accept a life half-lived, a life where your wings are cut before you can ever take flight. And once the habit of obedience sets in, it is difficult to remember what flight even feels like. The fifth and final behavior you must never allow is indifference. At first, it may not seem as dangerous as the others. After all, disrespect wounds, deceit confuses, cruelty destroys, and control suffocates. Indifference, by comparison, seems quiet, almost harmless. But in reality, indifference is the coldest of poisons, because it denies the very need we carry at the core of our being, the need to matter. Indifference is when your pain is invisible. It is when your joy is unacknowledged. It is when the things that shake your soul draw no response from the one who claims to care for you. And in time, this silence becomes heavier than words. The absence of cruelty can still be cruelty if it is paired with the absence of love. The philosopher Martin Buber spoke of the difference between relationships that are I, it, and I, thou. In I, it relationships, people are treated as objects, as functions, as roles to be filled. In I, thou relationships, people are encountered as living beings, as souls to be seen and cherished. Indifference is the death of the I, thou bond. It is the transformation of your humanity into an object barely worthy of notice. Indifference whispers that you do not matter, that your existence is optional, that your voice need not be heard. And when you accept this whisper, it becomes your inner voice. You begin to treat yourself with the same cold silence, dismissing your own dreams, numbing your own heart. Few things are more destructive than this, for once you stop mattering to yourself, the world can easily consume you without resistance. It is not enough to avoid cruelty and lies. It is not enough to demand respect and freedom. You must also refuse indifference. You must stand firm in the belief that your soul deserves warmth, recognition, and presence. For a life surrounded by indifference is not life at all. It is exile within your own existence. So here we stand, with the 5 shadows revealed. Disrespect, deceit, cruelty, control, and indifference. Each one is a slow erosion of the human soul, a theft of something essential. To tolerate any of them is to step quietly away from yourself, to betray the sacred spark within. But to refuse them, to say no with dignity and conviction, is to protect the essence of who you are. It is to declare that your life, your freedom, your voice, and your worth are not negotiable. This refusal is not arrogance, it is not pride, it is the deepest act of self-respect. And through self-respect, you learn how to love others without chains, how to forgive without losing yourself, how to stand in a world of shadows without letting the shadows consume you. We have stood together at the threshold of refusal, learning that to live well, there are behaviors we must never allow to enter our lives. Yet philosophy does not end with rejection. Life is not only about what we keep out, but also about what we allow in. For every shadow that must be refused, there is a light that must be welcomed. And it is this balance, this delicate weaving of boundaries and invitations, that makes existence meaningful. If disrespect poisons the soil, then what we must welcome is reverence. Reverence is more than politeness, more than courtesy. It is the act of seeing another person not just as a body or a voice, but as a soul. When someone treats you with reverence, they acknowledge that your inner world matters, that your thoughts, your dreams, and your struggles are worthy of attention. And when you treat others with reverence, you awaken the same truth within yourself. Reverence creates a space where dignity can breathe. It is in this space that love becomes trust, that friendship becomes sanctuary. Think of the times you felt truly seen, when someone listened without interruption, when they remembered a detail you thought was forgotten, when they looked at you not as a role but as a human being. In those moments, life feels luminous. The world has not changed, yet suddenly it seems more bearable, because you are no longer invisible within it. If deceit corrodes trust, then what we must embrace is honesty. Honesty is not always easy, and it is not always comfortable. Sometimes it requires exposing parts of ourselves that we wish to hide. But honesty carries with it a quiet strength. It allows bonds to grow roots that cannot be shaken by suspicion. To live in honesty is to live without the constant burden of performance, without the exhausting need to remember which mask you wore yesterday. When two people meet in honesty, they create a bond stronger than any illusion. Even if they disagree, even if the truth stings, there is a clarity that heals. For what hurts most in a lie is not the falsehood itself, but the message behind it, the message that says your soul is unworthy of the truth. Honesty, even when difficult, is the opposite. It says that your soul deserves nothing less than reality, that your bond is strong enough to bear it. If cruelty seeks to destroy, then what we must invite is compassion. Compassion does not mean weakness, and it does not mean naivety. It is not blind forgiveness or indulgence. Compassion is the recognition of shared humanity. It is to see the wound behind the anger, the fear beneath the mask, the longing hidden within the cruelty of another. To respond with compassion does not excuse their actions, it protects your spirit from being hardened by their darkness. Compassion is a fire that warms without consuming. It does not erase justice, but it refuses to let bitterness be the final word. To live with compassion is to remember that we, too, have wounded others, even if unintentionally. It is to remember that cruelty spreads when it is mirrored, but it stops when someone refuses to pass it on. If control seeks to cage us, then what we must cherish is freedom. Freedom does not mean living without responsibility. It does not mean chasing every desire without thought for the consequences. True freedom is the courage to become who you are, to walk the path that calls to you, even if others do not understand it. Freedom is the space to grow into your own voice, your own strength, your own truth. When someone gives you freedom, They give you the greatest form of love, the trust that you are capable of shaping your own destiny. And when you give freedom to others, you honor their humanity as equal to your own. Without freedom, love collapses into ownership, but with freedom, love becomes a gift freely given, renewed each day without chains. And finally, if indifference drains life of its warmth, then what we must embrace is presence. Presence is the art of being here, fully, with open eyes and an open heart. It is not about grand gestures or constant attention, it is about truly inhabiting the moments we share. To be present with someone is to listen not only to their words, but to the silences between them. It is to notice when their spirit is heavy, even if their lips are smiling. Presence transforms the ordinary into the sacred. A quiet conversation, a shared meal, a walk through the evening air, these moments become profound when touched by true presence. For what every human soul craves is not perfection, but connection. To be present is to give that gift, the assurance that in this moment, you matter completely. So the journey begins to shift. We no longer speak only of what to refuse, but also of what to welcome. Reverence instead of disrespect. Honesty instead of deceit. Compassion instead of cruelty. Freedom instead of control. Presence instead of indifference. These are not lofty ideals reserved for philosophers or saints. They are the lifeblood of every soul that longs to live fully and love deeply. But here lies the challenge. To demand these lights from others, you must first embody them yourself. You cannot insist on respect while treating others with contempt. You cannot demand honesty while hiding behind masks. You cannot call for compassion if you refuse to forgive, nor for freedom if you attempt to control, nor for presence if you are always elsewhere. To receive the light, you must also give it. And in that balance, life becomes something greater than survival. It becomes meaningful. It is one thing to know what should never be tolerated, and it is another to live by that knowledge. If wisdom alone were enough, none of us would ever find ourselves trapped in the shadows of disrespect, deceit, cruelty, control, or indifference. Yet we do. Again and again, we fall into their grasp. Not because we are weak, but because we are human. We often tolerate what we should not because the heart longs for connection. To walk away from cruelty may mean to walk into loneliness. To reject control may mean to lose the one who once made us feel safe. To demand honesty may mean to hear a truth we are not ready for. So we compromise. We tell ourselves it is temporary, that things will change, that love is about patience, that suffering is part of loyalty. And for a time, these stories soothe us. But philosophy whispers another truth. Suffering may teach, but unnecessary suffering erodes the soul. There is a reason the ancients spoke of courage as the highest virtue. Courage is not only about facing danger in the battlefield. It is about facing the silence that follows when you refuse what harms you. It is about standing firm in the emptiness before something new arrives. Courage is choosing dignity over comfort, truth over illusion, freedom over the safety of chains. Without courage, knowledge remains locked within us, unfulfilled and used. With courage, knowledge becomes transformation. But courage does not come easily. We inherit voices from the past that teach us to tolerate harm. Perhaps a parent's cold silence made indifference feel normal. Perhaps a friend's betrayal made deceit feel inevitable. Perhaps early wounds convinced you that cruelty is just another form of love. These lessons sink deep into the bones, and the adult self must work to unlearn what the child absorbed. This unlearning is slow. It requires patience, compassion, and above all, gentleness with oneself. Too often, when we finally recognize the patterns of harm we have allowed, we add a new layer of pain by blaming ourselves. But blame is another chain. The truth is simpler. We tolerated what we thought we had to tolerate in order to survive. Now, with clearer eyes, we can choose differently. Philosophy is not about condemning the past, but about reimagining the future. Consider the Stoic idea that we cannot control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. The past, with all its shadows, cannot be rewritten. But the present moment is always alive, always waiting for your choice. And in this moment, you can choose to no longer allow what diminishes you. You can choose to speak when you once stayed silent. You can choose to walk away where you once remained. You can choose to demand truth where once you accepted lies. And yet, even as we make these choices, the world will test us. People will try again to push against our boundaries. Some will disguise their demands in affection, others in anger, still others in indifference so cold it freezes the air. The test is not whether they try, the test is whether we stand firm. Boundaries are not built once, they must be built every day. And each time you say no to what wounds you, you reinforce the foundation of your own worth. But here lies a quiet paradox. To say no is not only about protecting yourself, it is also about protecting love itself. For love without respect, honesty, compassion, freedom, and presence is not love at all. It is possession, illusion, or silence wearing the mask of care. When you refuse harmful behaviors, you are not destroying love, you are making space for real love to grow. This is the secret many people do not realize. Boundaries are not walls that keep love out, they are gates that only let true love in. They are not the rejection of humanity, but the embrace of its most sacred form. When you protect your worth, you protect the possibility of a love that is mutual, honest, kind, and free. We have walked through shadows and we have walked through light. We have seen the poisons that should never be tolerated: disrespect, deceit, cruelty, control, and indifference. And we have seen the gifts we must welcome in their place: reverence, honesty, compassion, freedom, and presence. These truths stand before us not as abstract lessons, but as living choices that shape every relationship, every day, every breath. The question is no longer what should or should not be allowed. It is whether we will live with the courage to act on what we know. For knowledge without courage is like a lamp never lit. It has the power to illuminate, but if it remains hidden, the room stays dark. Life asks us not simply to understand, but to live, to let philosophy breathe through us in the choices we make, the words we speak, the boundaries we hold. To live this way is not easy. It means saying no when silence would be simpler. It means walking away when your heart longs to stay. It means carrying the weight of solitude when the world would rather you accept chains. But there is a profound truth waiting on the other side of this difficulty. The truth that when you refuse to betray yourself, you discover a strength that cannot be taken from you. Self-respect becomes your anchor. It steadies you when others dismiss you, when lies surround you, when cruelty lashes out, when control tightens its grip, when indifference chills the air. With this anchor, you are no longer tossed helplessly by the storms of others. You remain grounded, unshaken, alive in your own dignity. And with this grounding, love itself is transformed. No longer a desperate hunger for approval, no longer a fragile mask of belonging, love becomes something sacred. Love becomes the meeting of two free souls, each whole in themselves, choosing each other not out of fear, not out of need, but out of recognition. In that recognition, life becomes luminous. This is the gift of philosophy. It does not promise that the world will be kind, or that people will always honor your worth. But it teaches you to honor it yourself, and in doing so, to invite only what strengthens your soul. Life is too brief to be lived in shadows. It is too precious to be wasted on those who see you as less than you are. Every breath is a reminder that you exist only once in this form, in this moment. To betray that existence by tolerating what destroys you is the deepest tragedy. So let your no be clear, and let your yes be radiant. Refuse the poisons without hesitation, embrace the lights without fear. Walk with courage, even when the path feels lonely. For in truth, you are never alone. Every philosopher who ever lived, every soul who ever fought for dignity, every human being who ever whispered to themselves that they deserve better, they walk with you, unseen but present, reminding you that your life matters. And perhaps, one day, someone will see the way you live, the way you protect your worth without losing your compassion, the way you refuse the shadows while embracing the light. And in that moment, your courage will give them courage. Your boundaries will give them strength. Your dignity will awaken theirs. This is how philosophy moves from one life to another, not as words in books alone, but as living fire passed from soul to soul.